Greetings, you shoppers. Happy asynchronous day. We're going to be talking about Henry Clay and the American system today, as well as doing a little bit of an intro on the Great Awakening. Henry Clay is one of my all-time favorite characters, so hopefully you will enjoy him as much as I do. He's going to be with us for a while, so that'll be good. A couple of reminders before we get rolling here, and that is that reading response number 15 and your Jefferson Janus project is going to be due on the 29th or the 30th, depending on which class that you're in. Double check that you add the slide that you made and add that to your graphic organizer before you turn that into Canvas. And also a reminder that that day, the 29th and the 30th, will also be asynchronous. So you'll have a lesson on more about the Great Awakening, so the Great Awakening reforms. So be on the lookout for that, especially for the attendance part of that assignment. I need that in by 4 p.m. so that I can take attendance before 4:30. So please double check that you get that in on time. All right, let's talk American system. So we need to review the War of 1812 a tad here, at least look at the effects and the consequences. Let's remember kind of the afterglow that's happening here. After the war ends, we're feeling pretty good about ourselves, even though zero boundaries change, so no territory is lost or won. We do feel like we've held our own against Great Britain, and that's not a small deal. So that's pretty cool. And so we're feeling very extra American about it. So we have this wave of nationalism that's happening. You've got Andrew Jackson becoming this national hero, household name. He will obviously eventually become president as a result of that reputation. And then we're going to get this time period called the era of good feeling. So this is the age of Monroe. The reason that it gets this moniker or this name is because we are down to one political party. So it looks like we're unified, but in reality, we're not. There's definitely some issues going on. So remember, one of the consequences of the War of 1812 is the death of the Federalist Party because of something called the Hartford Convention, when they started talking about secession, and that puts the nail in the coffin. So you just have the Democratic Republicans, which sometimes in this time period, you'll see reference to the National Republican Party or the National Party. It's all the same, all the same things. But we have a lot of issues within our nation. And this is where we really start to see the impact of sectionalism. This is a term that you need to use and wield with expertise. So this is the idea that people in a certain region are going to be putting, the benefits of that region over the needs of the nation. So you're going to have representatives from each of these different regions. Henry Clay, of course, is going to be one of those. We've got the bus has expired in 1811. Wow, is that bad timing for the War of 1812? So I'm sure you know, waging wars is not cheap. And so the amount of money that we have to borrow for this war is pretty excessive. And so this is why, even though you've got these Democratic Republicans that had always hated the bank, they are forced to really admit that they need the Bank of the United States. We are still severely lacking roads. We've seen some movement here as a result of the market revolution, but it's pretty slow going. So enter Henry Clay, a Republican, of course, because they're all Republicans at this point, from Kentucky. He is very Jeffersonian, and that he believes in the importance of the agrarian republic. So he's definitely going to be highlighting farmer issues. Important to note, the one dark spot on his record is he is a slave owner. He is going to be espousing government protection of infant industries. This is not industries having to do with child rearing. This just means that our industries are quite childlike at this point. We're still growing. We need a little bit of protection. And so that's what he is going to try to do. And so this is the eye-opening moment for a lot of Americans, including Henry Clay, that Great Britain is just flooding our markets. with just a bunch of crap. They're trying to get rid of it, and we've got this trade imbalance going on. This is not new. This is something that we've been dealing with for a while. And so now we see, okay, our relationship with Britain got so bad that it did come to blows. So we need to make sure that we can take care of ourselves in this way. We can't just supply raw materials. We need to reinstate the Bank of the United States, and we need to get our manufacturing in more kind of fighting status. All right, so there's Henry Clay. So again, he'll be with us for a while. He'll be a prominent member of the Whig Party as well. So stay tuned for them. That'll be the second American party system. So who is Henry Clay? I always feel a little bit sad for him every year. He's always the bridesmaid and never the bride. He is gonna run for president 5 times and never gets that ultimate prize, but he's always in the spotlight. He is always in these rooms where big decisions are being made. So that's pretty impressive. He will have lots on his resume. He's Secretary of State under John Quincy Adams, JQA. That is the son of John Adams. He's the Speaker of the House longer than anyone else in the 19th century. So he is the go-to guy. And then he's going to serve in the Senate as well. And that's really where he makes his mark. So this is considered the golden age of the Senate. So this is the age of Henry Clay, Daniel Webster. Pretty soon we're going to get Stephen Douglas in there, Abraham Lincoln. So this really is the golden age here. He is at his heart, he is a nationalist. So despite all of this talk of sectionalism, he is a Union man, and that's part of what's on his tombstone, actually. So he is really going to try to put the needs of the nation before his section or his region as much as possible. It is not overstating it to say that the Civil War would have happened much earlier if it was not for Henry Clay. He gets this nickname of the Great Compromiser. So from here on out, if you've got a compromise in Unit 4 and 5, it's probably Henry Clay. So really important in trying to keeping everything together. He's a war hawk for 1812. So this means that he was agitating for war. So typically you would have doves and hawks. So doves would be looking for peace. And he's one of our treaty negotiators at the Treaty of Ghent at the end of the war in 1815. Again, he's going to be the leader of the Whig Party, and when he dies, so does the party. So that says a lot about his leadership. So the remnants of the Whig Party will become absorbed by the new Republican Party. Again, not to be confused with the National Republican Party or the Democratic Republican. So this is the Republican Party that we associate with today, even if the platforms between the parties will still be in flux for quite a while. All right, so I want you to take a minute and pause this and see how many presidents you can name in order that we have covered so far. So from number 1, so from 1776 until the 1820s. See how you can do and figure out how many of those are from Virginia. Okay, let's see how you did. All right, so I'm sure you were good through Washington, Adams, Jefferson, and then we've got Madison and Monroe. So Madison and Monroe, both Republicans. And next up will be John Quincy Adams in 1825. So you can see the vast majority of those, 4 of those are from Virginia. So our Virginia dynasty is holding strong. We'll see a big departure from the Virginia dynasty when we do get Andrew Jackson in the White House, our first Western president, but Western is Tennessee. All right, let's talk context for the American system. Remembering that we have these infant industries, they're having a lot of trouble competing with the big boys in Europe. So we're going to see more tariffs being passed. So we've got the tariff of 1816, we're going to have another one in 1824, another one in 1828, 1832, but our context for American system is the tariff of 1860. We've got infrastructure issues, especially in the West. especially in the state where Henry Clay lives. So the roads are starting, canals are starting, but it's slow going. And part of the problem is, who is going to pay for these? Is it going to be the state? If there's a road that is just in Kentucky, can Kentucky go to the federal government and ask them to pay for it? So this is one of the big questions about who is going to foot the bill for these things. We've also got an economic panic, and it's a big one. This is a depression. So this is caused by overselling of land speculation in the frontier lands. So overspeculation in this example is the idea that people are buying up this land for cheap and then trying to sell it at a higher price. And pretty soon there's just too much supply and it all goes bust. So this is our first real economic crash under the Constitution. And so one of the questions here is, well, what is the government going to do to help the American people? We've got Republicans in the White House. And so the answer there is not much, that it's going to be a little bit more hands off. We're going to see huge numbers of unemployment, debt, which again, remember that in this time period, that means that you're going to jail. So bad news there. So Clay realizes that it's taking so long to travel. So this is hooking up with this infrastructure bullet point there above. And so this is going to be part of the reason why he gets so fired up about infrastructure. Not too many people get really fired up about infrastructure, but he really does, because this is a miserable journey and we have to be better. You can't have your representatives taking a month to get to DC when you're trying to make these really important decisions, especially as we get closer into the 1850s and you've got a lot of compromises going on. You need that quicker travel. The charter is expiring once again for the bank in 1836. Remember how divisive this was with our party system, how the Marshall Court gets involved. We thought this was solved. But spoiler, it's not. And it's going to continue to not be solved, especially when Andrew Jackson comes in and he just hates the bus even more than Thomas Jefferson, which is kind of amazing. So hold on for AJ. Reminding ourselves at the point of tariffs, this is going to be a big piece of what Henry Clay wants to accomplish, is that it's going to make the price of foreign made goods more expensive. So that is hopefully going to lead the consumer to buy the American-made products if they are available. If they're not, those European-made products are going to be more expensive, and that price differential goes to the US Treasury. Again, reminding ourselves that we've got a trade imbalance. And so we've got the protective tariff of 1816. And what Henry Clay wants to do with this is be really specific about what we're going to do with that extra money. And so he wants to use that money to fund transportation improvements. And this is where we get in a pickle with the Constitution. So this question again of, should the federal government be getting involved with paying for transportation and improvements or infrastructure, especially if it only benefits one state? You know, should you be asking New York to foot the bill for the Maysville Road in Kentucky? So this gets a little bit complicated. So what is the American system? Really specifically, it's calling for a rechartering of the bank, the protective tariff, and we're going to keep those coming, and using federal money for internal improvements. Please note, you're going to have two presidents that will say yes on the first two, and then say no on the last one repeatedly. So again, they are strict constructionists, both Monroe and Madison, so they say no to that. So they are going to kind of throw it at the feet of the states. So for example, New York State will pay the money to build the Erie Canal. So that is not paid by the federal government. So we haven't gotten very far from our first American party system and dealing with these strict and loose construction issues. So we do have some great successes of the American system. You've got two regions that are going to be much more closely tied together. And that's good, because you're going to see more cooperation between regions. And that's important for fostering togetherness. And when we get to the point of compromises, they're already going to have a good relationship because of this economic relationship that they have. Of course, you may notice there's a section that is left out there. So we'll get to that on the failures slide next. Many states are going to build up their infrastructure like New York. You know, we've talked about this before, but market revolution, you're seeing these new big cities like Chicago, St. Louis, things like that. So those are successes as well. These infant industries, we'll say they're becoming teenagers now. They're able to prosper because of this economic tariff. Now the failures, just like with the market revolution, this is not benefiting all regions equally. Once again, the South is the big loser here, and they will spend a long time trying to catch up. We're going to see a huge increase in sectionalism. Again, a lot more on this when we get to Andrew Jackson, when things really get ugly in terms of sectionalism. And it will continue this debate of what the role of government should be in the economy. All right, here's your fluency fact info. So your years there, 1816 to 1830. So we've got a range. Henry Clay, obviously your person there on your fluency fact card. You could also add Monroe in there, but more of the debates are happening under Madison. So again, calling for a new national bank, the tariff, federal financing of roads and canals. Madison will veto. The other two become law. Big significance is the government is going to be sponsoring some economic development. A lot of historians refer to this as economic nationalism. It's going to establish new industries and reduce our dependence on foreign-made goods. Now, the biggest problem that USHAP students have with this is confusing this with Hamilton's economic plan, because they both end up with 3 pieces. So try not to confuse the 3 pieces of Hamilton's economic plan and Henry Clay's American system. So take a few seconds, see if you can remember what were the specific pieces of Hamilton's economic plan. Okay, so hopefully you remembered that it was the bank, so that one they have in common, so there's a similarity. But he was also looking at the state debt, the assumption of state debt by the federal government, and excise taxes. So that was the whiskey tax, whereas Clay's is the bank, the tariff, roads and canals. So hopefully that all stays straight in our brains. And the next piece you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking a look at an excerpt from Henry Clay himself, talking about the American system. So be ready to do some PPAC and some open-ended questions on this document.